a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Suge Knight. Marion Hugh, Suge Knight Jr. is an American former record producer, music executive, former American football player and convicted criminal. He is best known as the co-founder and former CEO of Death Row Records. Death Row Records rose to dominate the rap charts after Dr. Dre's breakthrough album The Chronic in 1992. After several years of chart successes for artists including Tupac Shakur, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Outlawz, and Dogg Pound, Death Row Records stagnated after Knight's incarceration on probation violation charges in September 1996 and went bankrupt in 2006. In February 2015, Knight was charged with murder and attempted murder following a fatal hit-and-run in Compton, California. He pleaded not guilty to all charges. On September 20, 2018, Knight changed his plea to no contest and was sentenced to 28 years in prison. Early life. Marion Hugh Knight Jr. was born in Compton, California, the son of Maxine and Marion Knight Sr. His name, Suge, derives from Sugar Bear, a childhood nickname. He attended Linwood High School in nearby Linwood, where he was a football and track star. He graduated in 1983. From 1983 to 1985, he attended and played football at El Camino College. In 1985, he transferred to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and played there for 2 years. After college, Knight was not drafted by a National Football League team, but was invited to the Los Angeles Rams training camp. He was cut by the Rams, but he became a replacement player during the 1987 NFL players' strike, and played 2 games for the Rams. Career beginnings. After the NFL, Knight found work as a concert promoter and a bodyguard for celebrities including Bobby Brown. In 1989, Knight formed his own music publishing company. His first big profit in the business came when Vanilla Ice agreed to sign over royalties from his smash hit, Ice Ice Baby, because the song included material written by Knight's client Mario Johnson. Knight and his bodyguards confronted Van Winkle several times. On one occasion, Knight entered Van Winkle's hotel room and allegedly dangled him by his ankles off the balcony. Van Winkle said only that Knight threatened to throw him off the balcony. The claim was resolved in court. Knight next formed an artist management company and signed prominent West Coast hip-hop artists DJ Quick and the DOC. Through the former, he met several members of the seminal gangster rap group NWA. Death Row Records. Dr. Dre and the DOC wanted to leave both NWA and their label, Ruthless Records, run by Eazy-E, another member of NWA. According to NWA's manager Jerry Heller, Knight and his henchmen threatened Heller and Eazy-E with lead pipes and baseball bats to make them release Dre, the DOC and Michelle A. from their contracts. Ultimately, Dre and DOC co-founded Death Row Records in 1991 with Knight, who vowed to make it the Motown of the 90s. Initially, Knight fulfilled his ambitions. He secured a distribution deal with Interscope, and Dre's 1992 solo debut album, The Chronic, went on to triple platinum status in the United States by the end of 1993. It also made a career for Dre's protege, Snoop Dogg, whose own debut album Doggy Style obtained a quadruple platinum certification in the United States in 1994. Meanwhile, Death Row had begun a public feud with Tulip Cruz Luther Campbell, and when Knight traveled to Miami for a hip-hop convention in 1993, he was apparently seen openly carrying a stolen gun. The following year, he opened a private, by-appointment-only nightclub in Las Vegas called Club 662, so named because the numbers spelled out mob on telephone keypads, mob standing for Member of Bloods. In 1995, he ran afoul of activist C. Dolores Tucker, whose criticism of Death Row's glamorization of the gangster lifestyle may have helped scuttle a lucrative deal with Time Warner. Tupac Shakur, MC Hammer, Dr. Dre, and the Death Row label. Knight's feud with East Coast entrepreneur Sean Combs progressed when Knight insulted the Bad Boy label founder on air at the Source Awards in August 1995. Openly critical of Combs' tendency of ad-libbing on his artists' songs and dancing in their videos, Knight announced to the audience, "Anyone out there who wanna be a recording artist and wanna stay a star, but don't have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the records, dancing, come to death row." The same year, Knight offered to post bail for Tupac Shakur if the rapper agreed to sign with Death Row. Shakur agreed, setting the stage for his 1996 double album All Eyes on Me and the songs California Love and How Do You Want It. MC Hammer's relationship with Suge Knight dates back to 1988. With the success of Hammer's 1994 album, The Funky Headhunter, Hammer signed with Death Row Records by 1995, along with Snoop Dogg and his close friend, Tupac. The label did not release the album of Hammer's music while he had a career with them, although he did release versions of some tracks on his next album. However, Hammer did record tracks with Shakur and others, most notably the song, Too Late Playa. After the death of Shakur in 1996, Hammer left the record company. He later explained his concern about this circumstance in an interview on Trinity Broadcasting Network since he was in Las Vegas with Tupac the night of his death. Hammer released Tupac's Unconditional Love on his Family Affair album in 1998. The friendships between Hammer, Tupac and Suge were depicted in the television film Too Legit, The MC Hammer Story. The label shrank when Dr. Dre, frustrated with the company's increasingly thuggish reputation and Knight's violent inclinations, decided to leave and form his own label, Aftermath Entertainment. A stream of Dre dissing records followed. Murders of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls, theories accusing Knight. Tupac Shakur was shot 4 times in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada on September 7, 1996, and died 6 days later on September 13. When Shakur's East Coast rival, the Notorious B.I.G., was murdered in a similar drive-by shooting in Los Angeles, California on March 9, 1997. Speculation arose that Knight was involved and that Biggie's death was a revenge killing. Former Death Row artists, including Snoop Dogg, also later accused Knight of being involved in Tupac's murder. A theory accusing Suge Knight in the deaths of both Biggie and Tupac was that of ex-detective Russell Poole, who conjectured that Knight had Tupac killed before he could part ways with Knight's label and then conspired to kill Biggie to divert attention from himself in the Tupac case. The convoluted Biggie murder theory implicated Suge Knight, a rogue cop, a mortgage broker named Amir Muhammad, along with the chief of police and the LAPD in a conspiracy to murder and cover up the murder of Biggie. The Biggie theory formed the basis of a lawsuit by his family, the Wallaces, against the city of Los Angeles. A key source for Poole's theory was Kevin Hackey. Hackey had implicated Suge Knight and David Mack. Hackey, a former Death Row associate, said that he had knowledge of involvement between Suge Knight and David Mack and other LAPD officers. His information was used by the Wallace family in their suit against the city of LA for Biggie's death. But Hackey later told a Los Angeles Times reporter Chuck Phillips that the Wallace attorneys had altered his declarations. The suit brought by the Wallace family against the city of LA, based on the Russell Poole theory, was dismissed in 2010. A 2005 Los Angeles Times article claimed that another source for the theory of Biggie's murder implicating Amir Muhammad, David Mack, Suge Knight, and the LAPD was a schizophrenic man known as Psycho Mike, who later confessed to hearsay and memory lapses and falsely identifying Muhammad. John Cook of Brill's Content noted that Phillips' article demolished the Paul Sullivan theory of Biggie's murder. Around the same time, Phillips wrote an LA Times 2-part series titled Who Killed Tupac Shakur? Into the Murder of Shakur, and events surrounding it based on police affidavits, court documents and interviews. The LA Times story indicated that the shooting was carried out by a Compton gang called the Southside Crips to avenge the beating of one of its members by Shakur a few hours earlier. Orlando Anderson, the Crip whom Shakur had attacked, fired the fatal shots. Las Vegas police discounted Anderson as a suspect after questioning him once briefly. He was later killed in what police said was an unrelated gang shooting. The article implicated East Coast music figures, including Christopher Biggie Smalls Wallace, Shakur's nemesis at the time, alleging that he paid for the gun. Before their own deaths, Smalls, his family, and Anderson denied any role in Shakur's murder. Biggie's family produced documents purporting to show that the rapper was in New York and New Jersey at the time. The New York Times called the documents inconclusive, stating, "The pages purport to be 3 computer printouts from Daddy's house, indicating that Wallace was in the studio recording a song called Nasty Boy on the afternoon Shakur was shot. They indicate that Wallace wrote half the session, was in and out / sat around and laid down a ref. Shorthand for a reference vocal, the equivalent of a first take. But nothing indicates when the documents were created." And Louis Alfred, the recording engineer listed on the sheets, said in an interview that he remembered recording the song with Wallace in a late-night session, not during the day. He could not recall the date of the session, but said it was likely not the night Shakur was shot. "We would have heard about it," Mr. Alfred said. Soon after the article was published, the smoking gun revealed that Phillips' FBI documents were fake. Mark Duvoisin, an editor at the LA Times, wrote in an opinion piece in Rolling Stone that Phillips' account had withstood attacks to its credibility. But the LA Times printed a full retraction of the 2-part series and released Phillips shortly thereafter during a wave of layoffs. In Tupac Shakur, Before I Wake, a documentary by Tupac Shakur's bodyguard, he and Kathy Scott, author of The Killing of Tupac Shakur and the Murder of Biggie Smalls, said that Knight would not have placed himself in the path of bullets he knew were coming. On her website, Archived Letters, Scott responds to a reader of her book stating that she felt there was never evidence to link Knight to Tupac's murder. Scott also told CNN that theory doesn't even add up. "Open fire on my car, but try not to hit me?" A 2006 law enforcement task force probe into Biggie Smalls' murder, which included then LAPD detective Greg Kading, included the murder of Shakur. In his 2011 self-published book, Murder Rap, Kading wrote that Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a member of the Crips street gang, gave a confession years later claiming he rode in the car used in the Las Vegas shooting of Shakur. The Crips claimed they had been offered $1 million by associates of Bad Boy Records to kill Shakur. Kading, who named Sean Combs as having been involved in the conspiracy, also wrote that a bounty was offered for Suge Knight's murder. While in Las Vegas, Kading's book claims Davis and fellow Crips members crossed paths with a BMW carrying Knight and Shakur. The fatal shots were fired by Orlando "Baby Lane" Anderson, who sat on the side of the car closest to the BMW. Kading alleged that Knight hired Waddle Pouchy Faust to kill Sean Combs' most valuable star, Biggie Smalls, a murder done following a party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. Pouchy later survived a murder attempt, but died in a drive-by shooting a year after the first attack. Charges were never brought against Faust or Knight, and the task force disbanded for reasons of internal affairs. After Shakur's death and the release of "Our Dog Father," Snoop Dogg openly criticized Knight for the murder of Shakur and left the label in 1998. He signed with Master P's No Limit Records and then forming his own record label, Doggy Style Records. In 2002, Snoop released the song "Pimp Slap D," in which he repudiated Knight and Death Row. In 2006, Snoop again attacked Knight verbally. Knight responded, stating that Snoop was a police informer who never goes to jail. End of Death Row Records. On April 4, 2006, Knight filed bankruptcy due to civil litigation against him in which Lydia Harris claimed to have been cheated out of a 50% stake in Death Row Records. Prior to filing, Knight had been ordered to pay to Harris. Under questioning by creditors, he denied having money tucked away in foreign countries or in an African company that deals in diamonds and gold. Bankruptcy documents filed showed Knight had no income from employment or operation of a business. According to financial records, his bank account contained just, and he owned clothing worth, furniture, and appliances valued at, and jewelry worth. He also testified that the last time he had checked the label's financial records was at least 10 years prior. Knight's lawyer said that his client was still at the helm of Death Row and had been working on securing distribution deals for the label's catalog. Harris told reporters she had received a payment, but had not agreed to settle the matter. I'm telling you, I didn't do a settlement for. That's ridiculous. Let's keep it real, she said. Knight skipped a meeting with his creditors after injuring himself in a motorcycle accident. Another scheduled meeting with the creditors had been missed after Suge said he had experienced a death in his family. Finally, on July 7, 2006, the federal judge, Ellen Carroll, ordered a bankruptcy trustee takeover of Suge Knight's Death Row Records, saying the record label had undergone a gross amount of mismanagement. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, which allows a company to continue business operations while restructuring. Death Row was being operated by Nielsen during the bankruptcy proceedings, while Knight oversaw his bankruptcy estate as a debtor in possession. In June 2007, he placed his 7-bedroom, 9.5-bath home in Malibu, California on the market as part of his financial makeover. The mansion was finally sold in December 2008 in bankruptcy court for. In June 2008, Death Row Records was put up for auction in bankruptcy court. The winning bid went to New York-based company Global Music Group, which confirmed it had purchased the firm in a statement to the Associated Press news agency. Global Music Group failed to secure funding and the Death Row Records catalog eventually went to Wide Awake Entertainment. On January 25, 2009, an auction was held for everything found in the Death Row Records office after the company filed for bankruptcy, including some of Knight's personal items. Of note was the Death Row Records electric chair, which sold for. Some of Knight's personal items appeared in an auction during the debut episode of NS Storage Wars, and a vault full of items was purchased by featured buyer Barry Weiss. 1987 arrests, conviction and probation. In October 1987, Knight was arrested for domestic violence after he assaulted his girlfriend and cut off her ponytail on the street. On October 31, 1987, Knight was arrested in Las Vegas, Nevada for auto theft, carrying a concealed weapon and attempted murder. He had allegedly shot a man 3 times while stealing his car. He pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge, and received 2 years probation. 2003 conviction and incarceration. In 2003 he was sent to prison again for violating parole when he struck a parking lot attendant. Death Row Records' income rapidly declined due to Knight's incarceration. It managed to save itself from complete bankruptcy by releasing archived Snoop Dogg compilation albums and posthumous Tupac albums. Despite signing new artists, Knight never released any of their albums. In 2006, Knight was engaged in another dispute with former friend and ex-associate Snoop Dogg after Snoop insulted him in an interview with Rolling Stone magazine. 2008 altercation. On May 10, 2008, Knight was involved in an altercation involving a monetary dispute outside of a nightclub in Hollywood. He was knocked out for 3 minutes, taken to the hospital, and reportedly did not cooperate with the Los Angeles Police Department. 2008 arrest. On August 27, 2008, Knight was arrested on drug and aggravated assault charges after leaving a Las Vegas strip club. When police arrived on the scene, Knight was beating his girlfriend of 3 years, Melissa Isaac, and brandishing a knife. Reports also alleged that he was under the influence of both ecstasy and hydrocodone. On December 5, 2008, Knight was cleared of all charges. Knight's attorney, David Chesnoff, said the prosecution had discovery problems and witness problems. When Knight was asked about the positive verdict, he replied, "God is good, happy holidays." Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?